Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajim. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Rabbana atina min ladunka rahmah wa hayyi lana min amrina rashada. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli waj'al li waziran min ahli Haruna akhi ushdud bihi azri wa shriku fi amri kay nusabbihaka kaseera wa nadhkuraka kaseera innaka kunta bina basira. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وصلى اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Welcome, dear friends. Inshallah, we'll start a new topic, which is the 23rd flash, which is on the topic of nature, which is a common word we hear all the time, right? And then when this author was also encountering, basically at this time, he thought this was going to be something problematic, the way the word nature is used, right? And so he wrote a treatise, this particular section on that. And we'll see what his point of view is. And I think it's very relatable from what I understand, because nature by itself is, nobody knows really how to define nature if you talk to anyone, right? So whatever the universe, they would call that as nature. But let's see how he presents the topic. So he says, first written as the 16th note of the 17th flash. So in this part of the Risale-i-Nur was later designated the 23rd flash because of its importance. For it puts naturalistic atheism to death with no chance of reanimation, and totally shatters the foundation stones of unbelief. Right? So the point is about the naturalistic atheism. So atheism defines everything, basically it's natural, it's nature. So let's see how he says. So he says, a reminder, this treatise explains through 9 impossibilities, themselves comprising at least 90 impossibilities, just how unreasonable, crude, and superstitious is the way taken by those naturalists who are atheists. In order to cut short the discussion here, and because these impossibilities have been explained in part in other sections of the Risale-i-Nur, some steps in the arguments have been skipped. It occurs to one, therefore, how is it that those famous and supposedly brilliant philosophers accepted such a blatantly obvious superstition and continue to pursue that way? Well, the fact is they cannot see its reality. And I am ready to explain in detail and prove through clear and decisive arguments to whoever doubts it that these crude, repugnant, and unreasonable impossibilities are the necessary and unavoidable result of their way. In fact, the very gist of their creed. And there's a footnote which says, what occasioned the writing of this treatise were the attacks being made on the Quran by those who called everything that their corrupted minds could not reach a superstition, who were using nature to justify unbelief, and were vilifying the truths of belief in a most aggressive and ugly fashion. Their attacks stirred up in my heart an intense anger, which resulted in those perverted atheists and falsifiers of the truth receiving vehement and harsh slaps. So their attack stirred up in my heart an intense anger, which resulted in those perverted atheists and falsifiers of the truth receiving vehement and harsh slaps. Otherwise, the way generally followed by the Risale-i Nur is a mild, polite, and persuasive one. All right, so let's get into it. So it starts with, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Their prophets said, is there any doubt about God, creator of the heavens and the earth? Which is verse from the Quran, section 14, verse 10, which is, let me bring it up, section Ibrahim, right? So he takes the first portion of that verse. قالت رسولهم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قالت رسولهم أفي الله شك فاطر السماوات والأرض, right? Fatir. So what is Fatir samawati? So the heavens and the earth, basically, right? Samawati wal ard. For example, could there be any doubt about the existence of the oneness of God, the originator of the heavens and the earth? Or this translator says the creator of the heavens and the earth, creator, the one who originates, another one, originator, Fatir, originator, like giving existence, basically, Fatir, right, from something that wasn't there, not origination, basically, out of nothing, brand new, created anew in a way. So Fatir samawati wal ard. By declaring through the use of a rhetorical question that there cannot and should not be any doubt about God Almighty. This verse clearly demonstrates the divine existence and unity. So divine existence and unity, everything in the universe exists, basically belongs to the same owner. Nothing can exist individually, independently, right, from the rest of the universe. I think that's a key point here, the divine existence and unity. So a point to be mentioned before our discussion. When I went to Ankara in 1922, the morale of the people of belief was extremely high as a result of the victory of the army of Islam over the Greeks. But I saw that an abominable current of atheism was treacherously trying to subvert, poison, and destroy their minds. Oh God, I said, this monster is going to harm the fundamentals of belief. At that point, since the above-mentioned verse makes self-evidently plain God's existence and unity, I sought assistance from it and wrote a treatise in Arabic consisting of a proof taken from the all-wise Quran that was powerful enough to disperse and destroy that atheistic current. I had it printed in Ankara at the Yenigun Press. But alas, those who knew Arabic were few, and those who considered it seriously were rare. Also, its argument was in an extremely concise and abbreviated form. As a result, the treatise did not have the effect it should have done, and sadly, the current of atheism both swelled and gained strength. Now I feel compelled to explain a part of the proof in Turkish and here in the translation of English, since certain parts of it have been fully explained in other sections of the Risale-i Nur. It will be written in summary form here. Those numerous proofs in part unite in this proof, so each may be seen as an element of this proof. So he's making use of this basically and de describing, but from this verse, basically, he's using this as his basis, what he understands from it. So this is like a an interpretation of this verse or in this treatise. What does it mean when God says, is that conformable? Is it really, does that make sense? Is there any doubt about God, creator of the heavens and the earth? And of course, we know that this author goes into the belief aspect, right? So it's not just information, yeah, there must be an agent, it's more beyond that, right? It's having that conviction in terms of, yeah, in every day to day, I'm not saying, oh, this thing was the cause of this, right? So something caused this, basically, which is the language prevalent right now. All right. Any comments before we go to introduction or anything? Any anybody wants to add in the verse itself or
That's not like him. It's interesting that he uses this verse because on the face of it, you would wonder, what is the proof, you know? But I think if you put the Arabic up, I think it becomes more clear. The English, I don't think is a good. He doesn't do it justice. Yeah. So, قال رسولهم أفي الله شك. They said, can there be about God any doubt? فاطر السماوات والأرض. So Fatir is like, yes, it's creator, but it's more like originator. And not just originator, like, but originator from being into non-being. From non-being into being, is conveyed by that Arabic. Yeah, Muhammad Asad said it. Can there be any doubt about God? And it really, he puts in parentheses, I mean, he knows what it's implying, the existence and oneness, the originator of the heavens and the earth. Muhammad says he's always usually more on point than other translators. Originator. And originator in terms of, I would put in parentheses, from non-being into being. That's what fatar or fatara means. Um, so when you understand the implication of just the word fatar, it's so concise, but it doesn't, like, English won't just, you can't make a one word translation into English. That's sort of the beauty of Arabic, is that one word can actually would be multiple words in English. That's the conciseness of Arabic. That's why I think an English translation doesn't do it justice, because fatir means originate from non-being into being, really, in reality, um, of the heavens and the earth. In other words, can the heavens and the earth originate themselves from non-being into being? It's obvious that they can't, so there can't be any doubt about the being of God, right, and his oneness. So, it's a seemingly simple verse, but it's actually quite loaded with meaning. So,
yeah, agreed. But the Father, for example, anything that we see in the universe, we can wonder, can that give existence to something else?
yeah,
And
and it's
he
not just
studied that.
like originator is something that's like the originator from non-being into being, but I think it is a little more subtle than that in Arabic. I think originator, in other words, like, where I think it's different than creator per se.
Right.
Originator, it's almost like speaking to like the naturalists or the scientists, because they're always looking for the origin story. In some sense, like, how did all things begin? And the Quran is like pointing out, even not just the very moment, but even the very beginning. You can't even explain how something. because they're always looking for the origin story, the beginning, how something came into being. They're like, you even ask at the origin, how does something come from non-being into being? Like, how does the seed come into being? You know?
Yeah. Like the Big Bang
Um, yeah.
theory. That
Sorry, Tanya.
I said the Big Bang theory
Yeah, so
that
everybody's looking for an
they're
origin
explaining it.
story. Yeah, so because they think like, okay, maybe now everything is in motion, but we'll find the origin at somewhere before. But I mean, you ask the same question everywhere. Even the origination that you think is the origin still must come into being. So how does that happen? So it's almost like leveling a criticism against materialist, naturalist people. So
So doesn't that go into an infinite regress that even that thing that you say
correct.
the
Yeah,
originator,
yeah,
then what made
yeah,
that and
yeah.
what
That
made the
that's
other?
actually, I think, me personally, I think that's the subtlety between Father and Khalik. Khalik being creator, Father being originator. Like originator points like to the whole process. It's like he's originating everything in the process, not just you think the tree, but the tree, the sapling, the shoot, the seed, all those things, all at once. It's happening by him alone, and that's why there can be no doubt about him, about his being. Because by definition, as he says, as Asad says, oneness or absoluteness, I would say, the unity, absoluteness, meaning he encompasses all things, even the origin, you know? How can there be any doubt about him then, really? You know? So,
Mm.
yeah,
MashaAllah, and how
yeah.
he makes use of this verse. So let's see the introduction. Oh man, you should be aware that there are certain phrases which are commonly used and imply unbelief. The believers also use them, but without realizing their implications. We shall explain three of the most important of them. The first, causes create this. The second, it forms itself. It comes into existence and later ceases to exist. The third, it is natural. Nature necessitates and creates it. Indeed, since beings exist, and this cannot be denied, that things in the universe they exist. And since each being comes into existence in a wise and artistic fashion, and since each is not outside time, right, but is being continuously renewed, then, O falsifier of the truth, you are bound to say either that the causes in the world create beings. For example, this animal, that is to say, it comes into existence through the coming together of causes, or that it forms itself, or that its coming into existence is a requirement and necessary effect of nature, or that it is created through the power of one all powerful and all glorious. Since reason can find no way apart from these four, if the first three are definitely proved to be impossible, invalid and absurd, the way of divine, invalid and absurd. The way of divine unity, which is the fourth way, will necessarily and self-evidently and without doubt or suspicion be proved true. So he's presenting whatever the three or four reasons that reason can, when one thinks about the existence of something, where the existence comes from, right? So he's using very carefully the words basically things since beings exist. And can anyone deny this, first of all, right? That they are given existence, they exist, they're here in this world. And then since each being comes into existence in a wise and artistic fashion, so they come with certain qualities, right? They're given along with that existence, which shows that, yeah, whoever made this must be a wise artist in a way. So they're fashioned and then they also exist within time and space, which is incredible how since each is not outside time, but it is being continuously renewed. Because as we say, the concept of time is very important as well, right? Continuous change that is happening, creation, continuous renewal. And we label that this is the time aspect of it. So something like very wonderful, strange is happening in this universe with the beings and then continuously being subject to change. And then he says, you are bound to say either that causes in the world create beings, right? So that's one of the explanations that is prevalent, or even the understanding of many people that causes because of this cause, this happened. Even the, as he says, even the believers are into this understanding. The second is that it forms itself, or that its coming is a requirement, necessary effect of nature. So it's natural that this is happening. And then the fourth is the that's it is the power of one all powerful and all glorious. So the first three can definitely be proved to be impossible, invalid, and absurd. Whereas the way of divine unity, which is the fourth way, will necessarily and self-evidently be proved true. So, any thoughts, Hill, on this one? Like this particular introduction? I think is there any other explanation that we can think of in terms of how to explain something that comes into existence, like originates into being?
Yeah, so there's not really, I mean, yeah, I mean, these are just words people say. They don't really mean anything, as he'll show. But as he shows that, I like how Nursi goes through this because he shows that he actually uses the process of La ilaha illahu, meaning he negates other possibilities before coming to, which is what the Quran does. To come to an absolute one, you have to negate everything else, other possibilities. It's not that's his math because that's what the Quran does. That's really the only consistent or coherent method, you know, uh, denying other ilahs like la ilaha, la ilah, so other possibilities within the world before coming to a necessarily existent one, as he'll say. Um, so there really isn't any other thing. I mean, they're all kind of the same thing, but people just use words to make them sound different. Causes create this. What are causes? Nobody knows. Causes create this. Or something external to the thing, like the animal or the plant, causes create it. Or what causes? I mean, it could be like sun, the rain, the water, the soil, something like that for a plant. It forms itself. It comes into existence and later ceases to exist. Like the flower made itself. How? Okay, I guess we'll see how that's even possible. It is natural, so nature did it. Nature necessitates it. Something called nature, something, some being, whatever that is, nature caused the plant to be. Those are really the three possibilities, you know. So there'll be, but they're all essentially the same thing, but they make it sound different, like as if it's something intellectual, you know. So, but
Yeah.
um,
I think this also goes in like in the stage by progress, basically. For example, the first one causes speed, right? And then when you ask them further, they say, "Oh no, it's within itself. The thing has the abilities. It forms itself." And then even if you ask them, "Hey, can you show me within itself how it?" Then you say, "Oh, it's just natural." So there's an escapism kind of mechanism. Gradually, if you further fine tune the argument, so then they just like, go away by explaining that, oh, it's natural.
no, yeah, you're right. Actually, it's a very good point. I missed that, but yeah, you're right. He goes in its stages. Like first, it's general, like oh, okay, just say causes, whatever that even means, and then you say, okay, no, no, it's the thing itself does it. Well, how does the thing itself do? Or they're like, oh, yeah, you said, yeah, no, nature. Then they try to give it like a name, something
Right.
intellect, something a being, because they know that. You can't have a like what cause? What is the cause? And in the end, they say it's nature, even though they should have said nature at the beginning, but they know nature isn't a thing. So you just throw a word out there,
Right.
you know, just to make it sound like there's an agent or a cause.
Yeah, I think there's a dogma just to say, hey, I don't want to attribute it to something that is not in the na in the universe. So let me just explain it by nature or something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
They don't want to see like they don't want to acknowledge all these are all invalid, but they don't want to. They'll just make up something, you know. It's nonsense, but yeah. So.
Then I don't know how people are just satisfied with living with this thing.
Unfortunately, it sounds intellectual. It sounds smart. It sounds like sophisticated or modern, you know?
That this is natural.
Yeah. Yeah. So, because then they give you the whole mechanism, then they show you how precise it is, and they put names to everything else, and this and that process and that mechanism, this, and look at all these things happening. So it sounds like, oh, they found the answer, the solution, but how are they happening? How is it possible that they're happening? What is the cause? How did it come into being? What is the originator? No, nature.
Yeah, and then I mean, if you ask someone, can you define nature? What do you get? And so did you ask anyone this question or?
Yeah, and I mean, nobody has an answer. That's what I'm saying. It's a made up word. Nobody even knows what nature is, you know?
Right, right.
Yeah, it's fiction. It's a fictitious thing. It's not even real. So it's an imaginary concept.
All right, let's continue with the first way then. So this to imagine that the formation and existence of things, creatures, occurs through the coming together of causes in the universe. We shall mention only three of its numerous impossibilities. So this is the first one that says causes create this, right? So he's examining that statement. So he says, first impossibility. Imagine there is a pharmacy in which are found hundreds of jars and fields filled with quite different substances. A living potion and a living remedy are required from those medicaments. So we go to the pharmacy and see that they are to be found there in abundance, yet in great variety. We examine each of the potions and see that the ingredients have been taken in varying but precise amounts from each of the jars and fields, whatever that jars and whatever containers. 1 ounce from this, three from that, seven from the next, and so on. If 1 ounce too much or too little had been taken, the potion would not have been living and would not have displayed its special quality. Next, we study the living remedy. Again, the ingredients have been taken from the jars in a particular measure so that if even the most minute amount too much or too little had been taken, the remedy would have lost its special property. Now, although the jars number more than 50, the ingredients have been taken from each according to measures and amounts that are all different. Is it in any way possible or probable that the jars should have been knocked over by a strange coincidence or sudden gust of wind, and that only the precise, through different, though only the precise, though different amounts that had been taken from each of them should have been split and then arranged themselves and come together to form the remedy? Is there anything more superstitious, impossible, and absurd than this? If an ass could speak, it would say, I cannot accept this idea, and would gallop off. Right, so this is an example, a simple example of a pharmacy where the medication remedy is taken from in precise and perfect proportion. That's how the formation of beings like the Father that one has to wonder at, right? The Father Samavati wal earth for each being, how they're coming with into existence in their origination. And then he says it's just a simple worldly example of the way the remedy is made in a pharmacy, which requires precise measurements, right, and particular ingredients and whatever the amounts that is required to make that remedy. So could all those causes come together and then, they fall off and then this particular remedy, or you need some agent behind it that makes it precisely into that, right? So similarly, so it's an analogy basically he's using in terms of the things in the universe. Each living being may be likened to the living potion in the comparison, and each plant to a living remedy, for they are composed of matter that has been taken in most precise measure from truly numerous and truly various substances. If these are attributed to causes and the elements, and it is claimed causes created these, it is unreasonable, impossible, and absurd 100 times over, just as it was to claim that the potion in the pharmacy came into existence. Right, so this is important. It came into existence through the jars or the containers being knocked over by accident. Right, that's another word, by accident. So in short, the vital substances in this vast pharmacy of the universe, which are measured on the scales of divine determining and decree of the all-wise and pre-eternal one, can only come into existence through a boundless wisdom, infinite knowledge, and all-encompassing will. Right? So this is the key, right? How does it come into existence? Each being through a boundless wisdom, infinite knowledge, and all-encompassing will. The unfortunate person who declares that they are the work of blind, deaf, and innumerable elements and causes and natures, which stream like floods, and the foolish, delirious person who claims that wondrous remedy poured itself out when the fields, jars, or not containers were knocked over and formed itself, and certainly unreasonable and nonsensical. Indeed, such denial and unbelief is a senseless absurdity. All right. Any comment on this first impossibility of the simple example in forms of an analogy? Right.
Um, yeah, so I guess he goes through the first way, and then he says, formation of things, creatures occurs through coming together of all causes in the universe, and why this first way is impossible. And so he gives the example, like I guess the pharmacy, where you'll find jars and vials with substances, but each substance, um, uh, there are many substances, living substances, potions that are required to make these, and they're all made in precise measurement. In the pharmacy, like precise measurements of the ingredients. As he says, 1 ounce from this, three from that, seven from this, so on. And if they're not precise, then they would not have the special quality, as he says. Um, um, yeah, so everything has been measured out precisely. Um, and as he says, even those many ingredients, they've been precisely taken. They're all different. Um, and he says, like, is it possible, since when he says knocked over, essentially by random chance, randomness, chance, that they come together in perfect, precise measurement to form this file? Um, should they have arranged themselves, um, when they arrange themselves to come together to form the remedy? And so he said this is impossible. It's an absurd idea, and you wouldn't accept it. Um, Likewise, each living thing can be likened to the living potion, and each plant to a living remedy, for they are composed of matter. So the same way they're composed of matter, many, in more than even 50, innumerable amount of substances in precise measurement. And if you think that the elements themselves, those material, the ingredients did it themselves, it's same way unreasonable how they all by random chance come together. Um, in such extreme precise measurement that if something was barely off, it wouldn't even happen to be. You wouldn't even have a human being. It's impossible and absurd 100 times over. So, in other words, does randomness or chance, does it cause a living thing, a precise measurement? By definition, doesn't it's impossible. How does randomness or chance make make precise measure? It's by an accident. It doesn't even make sense. So, but in other words, he says then they must all then be measured on the scale of divine determining, meaning they've been determined to be in precise measure. So it can only come in by an absolute one, all wise, pre-eternal one, because through boundless wisdom, infinite knowledge, all-encompassing will. Uh, so, so they, it's nonsensical to say chance does it, because how does chance know anything about being precise? You know, these random occurrences, random causes, know anything about being precise measurement. It's not in them to know precise measurement, so it's impossible. It's an absurdity. So I think that's the way it's in the first way why it's impossible. In other words, you can't have precision from randomness. That's what I think he's trying to say.
Right. All right. So let's go to the second impossibility. If everything is not attributed to the all-powerful and all-glorious one, who is the single one of unity and is attributed to causes, it necessitates that many of the elements and causes present in the universe intervene in the being of every animate creature. Whereas that different and mutually opposing and conflicting causes should come together of their own accord in complete order, with the finest balance and in perfect concord in the being of a tiny creature, like a fly, is such an obvious impossibility that anyone with even an iota of consciousness would say this is impossible, it could not be. The tiny body of a fly is connected with most of the elements and causes in the universe. Indeed, it is a summary of them. If it is not attributed to the pre-eternal and all-powerful one, it is necessary for those material causes to be themselves present in the immediate vicinity of the fly. Rather for them all to enter into its tiny body, and even for them to enter in each of the cells of its eyes, which are minute samples of its body. For if a cause is of a material nature, it is necessary for it to be present in the immediate vicinity of and inside its effect. And this necessitates accepting that the constituents and elements of the universe are physically present inside that minute cell, a place too small even for the tip of its antenna, and that they work there in harmony like a master. A way such as this then shames even the most foolish of the sophists. Okay, so the second example or impossibility gives the example of the creation of a fly, right? The tiny body of a, I mean, there are even smaller, tinier creatures, right? Then, but even look at like the tiniest little fly thing that you see, like a fruit fly or even smaller than those fruit flies, right? So, and how the precision and everything that its eyes, wings, antennas, there's so many of these in its tiny body, how is it possible that this thing exists from anything material and assembled? Right. So each, like it says, each of the cells of its eyes, which are minute samples of its body. So if a cause is of a material nature, it is necessary for it to be present in the immediate vicinity of and inside its effect. But so so the existence of that fly, basically, all its constituent parts, the body parts, its eyes, antenna, wings, how can they, you know, be the cause of the composition of how this artistic beauty of the fly comes into being? And then the workings of everything, coordination of each and every part of that particular fly is another aspect of it.
Yeah. Assalamu
Right now,
Do you remember when Brother Ali used to sometimes discuss with us in these something like this? He would say that the causes are like adjacent to each other. They're not like subsequent to each other. Something like this. Does anyone remember that? I'm just trying to recall what was said there because I think it helps to understand like matters like this. Does that ring a bell for anybody?
Suhail?
I don't personally remember that, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay. All right. What comes to my mind is whatever the cause is of the out of the thing we're looking at, that cause is not really of the nature of what the effect is or what the thing is that we're looking at. Like they are not Like you cannot uh, associate the two because their constituencies are different. Their natures are even different in a way. Right? Is that I'm not feeling so well today, so I'm sorry, but is that kind of what you understand is being discussed here? If you were associating or attributing like the fly or a part of the fly to other causes, those other causes are not of the same, like they can't really intervene because they're not of the level that could intervene in a matter that could result in the thing that we're looking at, right? Yeah. So that is, if that makes sense, that's what I'm understanding from this. Yeah, so far, am I tracking that I'm following what's being said here based on what you understand?
Yeah, so here he's trying to break down that causes create this and what that entails when somebody uses the phrasing, oh, causes create this, right? So he's giving a few impossibilities. First one was basically, with the pharmacy, that accident or anything that they got together and made the remedy. So each being in existence in the universe, can that be a random or accidental existence that is something's got together? And the second impossibility is like study just one little thing, like a smallest creature, like a fly, right? And like you said, Adam, right, in terms of but I'm not sure exactly what you meant by that being next to it or what, right? But even getting those different parts together, I mean, just look at the existence and ha harmony and each precision of each and every part of the body of that fly. How is it possible to attribute it to its constituent parts, even if they're close enough? Like, how can they give existence or to that particular being and the connections that are made? Because that fly exists with the rest of the universe, right, in its existence.
Yeah, I think, yeah, so what I took away from this was um as you said, kind of what you were saying, adjacent. Like I think when he says causes here, he's trying to say causes as if they have like a personality, as if they have like a individuality. And so for all the causes that are necessary for the fly's very being, whether it's like the body of it, the antenna of it, they're all, as you said, adjacent. They're all coming together at once to make that part of the fly and then all of the fly come together. How is it possible when they are in opposition to one another? They may be possibly contradictory to one another. Um, and yet they occur in balance to one another, that a fly can even come into being. So how do these sort of unconscious things, you know, work in such precise way, even though they may be in mutual opposition to one another, and that they're innumerable, so many causes and elements that must be present for just a fly to come into being. How do they come in together with complete order? Complete order, harmony, even though they may be in opposition, and such precision. So the first way he said about precision, I think the second way he's talking about how do they come together in such harmony. So this is sort of the second possibility, harmony. Precision, maybe the first one, or precise measurement. Second one was the second possibility is about harmony. They're all working together in harmony rather in mutual. Like, how is this possible, even though they may be conflicting? Because he always talks about how things are in mutual cooperation rather than opposition. That could only be because of an all-powerful and all-glorious one, a single one of
Right.
them.
Yeah.
So here he's saying, like, how does everything come in together in harmony? As Adam was saying, like, like they're all working together. They may be, um, and that's sort of impossible. And then not just working together, but working together with such fine balance. Um, so uh, yeah, uh, yeah, that's what I understood. And he goes into like what he says about immediate vicinity. Like I think what he means by it, uh, I think that's maybe what Brother Adam was alluding to, uh, that the cause being adjacent to the effect. I mean, they're not necessarily related, but they have to be present together. And how are all of them present? And even like the smallest tip of the antenna, and they work together in harmony like a master. Um, so they're all of these causes, these elements are present even in the smallest cell, and they're working together in harmony. Um, so um, because you can't have the cause somewhere. His point here, I think, is the cause and the effect are one. You can't like make a distinction between the two, even though the two are in a way unrelated, if you think about it, because the cause and the effect are not the same thing, but they have to be together. You can't talk about the cause and the effect separately, per se. Like the cause and the effect are at the same time. So what he's saying is you can't have a cause like halfway across the universe and the effect is the antenna. The cause has to be in the antenna itself because the effect is the antenna, even the smallest cell. So how do
Right.
all of these causes come together in such perfect harmony, even though they're in mutual opposition to one another? That's what I think he's trying to say here.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense actually. So the cause and effect basically you said is we can't talk about that basically in a way. That's what the author is saying. So the cause is of a material nature. It's necessary for it to be present in the immediate vicinity of inside its effect. So it has to be within itself, basically. And in that cell, the whole cause and the effect must be present at the same time, basically, together. Which is and then it has to work in harmony, which is impossible for those material causes to cause that. All right. Okay, so the third impossibility. It is an established rule that if a being has unity, it can only have been issued from a single being, from one hand, particularly if it displays a comprehensive life within a perfect order and sensitive balance. It demonstrates self-evidently that it did not issue from numerous hands, which are the cause of conflict and confusion, but that it issued from a single hand that is all-powerful and all-wise. Therefore, to attribute such a well-ordered and well-balanced being which has unity to the jumbled hands of innumerable, lifeless, ignorant, aggressive, unconscious, chaotic, blind, and deaf natural causes, the blindness and deafness of which increase with their coming together and intermingling among the ways of numberless possibilities, is as unreasonable as accepting innumerable impossibilities all at once. If we leave this impossibility aside and assume that material causes have effects, if we leave this impossibility aside and assume that material causes have effects, these effects can only occur through direct contact and touch. However, the contact of natural causes is with the exteriors of living beings. And yet we see that the interiors of such beings, where the hands of material causes can neither reach nor touch, are 10 times more delicate, well ordered, and perfect as regards to the art than their exteriors. Therefore, although tiny animate creatures on which the hands and organs of material causes can in no way be situated, indeed, they cannot touch the creature's exteriors all at once even, are more strange and wonderful as regards to their art and creation than the largest creatures. To attribute them to those lifeless, unknowing, crude, distant, vast, conflicting, deaf, and blind causes can result only from a deafness and blindness compounded to the number of animate beings. All right, so in this third impossibility, he's talking about how the art and the creation of these creatures, how can, if the causes, the external exterior causes can make that come together and be the result of that art and creation, bringing into being, into existence. Right, so that is also, and these beings themselves have no ability, no wisdom in those external beings. Right, so they're deaf, they're blind, they don't know what is required in the inner workings, the art and the organs, how they're gonna be animated, life, nothing. Right. So it's another impossibility. So natural causes basically are deaf, blind, and yet everything is coming into existence with precision, art, harmony. What do you think, Suhail? On this third impossibility, anything else?
Yeah, so I guess so first he was talking about precision, then he was talking about um uh harmony. And now he's talking about um how if a being has unity, it can only be from a single being, meaning because you have precision and harmony, and back to his original example about the potion, the potion is like it's working perfectly. It has balance, perfect order and balance. It cannot be from numerous hands, I think. Cause of conflict and confusion. So I think you can say maybe his first way was precision, first impossibility, second way harmony, and third way like order or balance. Um, so that this is his third point, third impossibility. And that you don't see any conflict or confusion, you see order and balance in the being itself. So how can they proceed from many different hands? They can only from a single hand. Um, so it's because the thing has unity, meaning if I look at the human body, for example, everything is working in perfect order and balance. There's a unity there. While we're working in cooperation, balance, order, how can they be from innumerable, jumbled up, lifeless, unconscious, ignorant, opposing, chaotic hands, deaf natural causes? So, yeah, it's possible that all of these things that have no idea are sort of in opposition to balance and order, or are ignorant, lifeless, that they can come together and form a unified being. Um, so, um,
Bless you.
and so, he goes on to say then, if we leave this possibility aside and that material causes have effects, they can only occur through direct contact and touch, like we were talking before, and that you have to have the cause and effect at the same place, at the same time. Um, and he says the contact of natural causes is with the exteriors of living beings. Um, so I think what he's trying to say is that, you know, the effects, the balance and order extends to even the smallest aspect of something, even the smallest cell, even within the cell, the smallest particle within the cell. Um, you know, they are well balanced, even more delicate and perfect. Um, so, how is it possible that the causes are even all reaching that so precisely with such balance and harmony? Um, so I think that's his point here. Um, but how can a lifeless, unconscious, ignorant cause reach even the most deepest interior of a being and then have it operate even the more delicate than even the exterior? I think that's what he's trying to say here. So,
Yeah, Jazakallah khairan. Incredible. If a being has unity, can only have been issued from a single being, from one hand, basically. I mean, all these different parts have a share, all these different, even if they're, I mean, even assume that they can do the exteriors, but of that particular creature, let's say the fly, but the interiors and how the harmony, well-ordered being, the balance and the art within itself, right? Very sensitive. And all these parts of themselves have don't know or lifeless or ignorant. And he also says about the cause of conflict and confusion, right? Numerous hands being conflict and confusion. Did you see that? Right. I mean, everything would try to dominate each other, and then, how would that create the well-ordered balance if, things, anything if has the ability to create or anything, let's assume that, but right, so that is another impossibility. All right, inshallah, I think we can stop here for today. Right, and we'll continue with the second way, inshallah, next time, which is it forms itself, it creates itself, and how that statement is also impossible to digest or accept. All right, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma alamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Bihumti Surat al-Fatiha. All right, thank you everyone. We'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum.